Language learning.
Aprender.
Yes.
Sí.
Aprender, sí. All right.
That's
So,
all I remember. So that's those are my notes.
well, what? We both took Spanish in high school, right?
So I took 3 years.
Okay. And I took the 2 year, which was the minimum, I believe. The forced, the forced minimum. Um, but like, I think, I think there are schools these days where the kids are doing it in like elementary school, which is wild.
That's so smart.
Yeah, it's great. I love that. But
It makes me
okay.
feel, it gives me confidence in America. That's something that we're moving towards because you go anywhere else and people speak at least two languages.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. There's a couple things there. Like one is pretty much anywhere else. Well, I guess if you're talking like Europe or Africa, um, even the Middle East and most of Asia, there's just a lot of countries that are like they're all right next to each other and they
Yeah.
all speak different languages,
Yep. Which is pretty cool.
which is cool. So, but it's more you're more exposed. Whereas like Latin America, there's a lot of different countries, but most of them all speak Spanish. So if you live in, I don't know, like Nicaragua, you might not speak anything other than Spanish just because other countries around you still speak Spanish too. So
Right. Right. But they all speak English. Most of them.
a lot of people speak English, but that's the other component of it is English is like the world's, they call it a lingua franca, which is a language that's used for like, uh, they use it in the UN, they use it in business, they use it to communicate between cultures. They call it a lingua franca. It used to be French and now it's English.
Oh, really? I didn't know French was the previous lingua franca.
Yeah, back when the French Empire was like ruling the world.
Yeah,
But
I
so being in America without those other countries around us, and being that our language is the lingua franca of the world,
mhm.
there's no motivation to learn other languages.
Yeah, it's just I want to be a better person. I want to learn and communicate.
Yeah, that's it. And so, like, the reason we're talking about this topic is because I've been learning Spanish for like the past 2 years now,
Nice.
almost 2 years, on and off in the beginning, but then the past year was a lot more like focused.
The first thing that I want to talk about here is that when speaking to other people in a different language, they are always happy that you're trying and they appreciate it. So, first of all, don't be embarrassed.
Yes, that's the number one thing is don't be embarrassed. Like I know how it is sometimes when somebody speaks broken English to you
Mhm.
and maybe when they leave or whatever, somebody will make a joke and they'll like laugh about it. But really, if you have never tried to speak to somebody in another language, you don't know how impressive it is that they were just able to communicate the idea to you and you understood what
Yeah.
they were getting at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a very American thing.
It's a
Like,
very,
oh, your English is bad, but I've never tried to talk to anyone in Arabic or French or German or Japanese.
exactly. And just the mere fact like that you can communicate an idea to somebody and they can understand it, even if the grammar is like, even if the grammar is terrible, you know, it's still really impressive.
Yeah.
So,
So for me, that's like a big hurdle that I want to put out into space because I think it's underrated and underdelivered, and people need to be more willing to put themselves out there. And I think they'll be pleasantly surprised.
yep. Yep. Absolutely. And the one thing that I do is there's this app called italki. And what it is just you go on there and whatever language you want to study or whatever, you search and just has a bunch of teachers on there. And they're not, some of them are professional teachers, some of them are just people who speak the language and they want to make a couple extra bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can just set up meetings like a 30-minute session over Skype or whatever. And you just talk to them and some of them will be like really structured if you want them to be, but others can just be a conversation. And you're paying for it, a really cheap price most of the time. You're paying for it so you don't have to be embarrassed. So you can kind of get over that sort of like
Yeah, that's a
hurdle.
good point too.
Yeah.
You're making a student-teacher relationship.
Yeah. They don't expect you to, they expect you to be a student, they don't expect you to have it down. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
good place to go. and try it out.
So you and your partner are both working on Spanish, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So when you two practice on each other, I'm curious as like a fly on the wall of someone who speaks Spanish really well. I wonder if you two sound, intelligible, or you both have the same mistakes, if you will, right? Because you guys are learning together without a third person saying, "Hey, that's a little weird. Do it this way." So what have you found from learning with her to learning with a tutor?
So you're
Like
right.
picking
There's
up
no one.
bad habits.
No, you're right. There's no one to point out the mistakes, right? Like there's no,
Mhm.
if it's just us, if neither one of us are fluent, there's no one to tell us where we're wrong. Um, but
Thank you for making that a little bit more concise. My point was a little wandery.
no. But when I talk to people on Skype who are natives, I have conversations with them, so they definitely understand me and I understand
Mhm.
them. So I can't be that far off on my own, right?
Right.
If they're able to understand me. So I have some level of confidence that even when I'm talking without a native speaker there, that I'm generally in the ballpark, you know? I have
Mhm.
some level of confidence of that just because, like I said, I can have conversations with people. Um, so the other point I would make is like I watch like Netflix in Spanish or like listen to podcasts or whatever in Spanish. And so it's kind of like those sources of input over time. I'm doing a lot of it. That's going to ingrain like the right patterns of speech into me.
Right.
And then the speaking component is just me trying to like sort through it and produce those patterns, but not necessarily correct anything all the time, if that makes sense. Like just trying to take all the input that's been washing over my brain that I've been paying attention to, and then just practicing putting it out as I've heard it, if that makes sense. So sometimes I'll be wrong if I'm trying to say some sort of grammatical construction that I've never heard before, or
Mhm.
some phrase that I've never heard before, and I'm trying to figure out what it might be, then I might be wrong. But um, if it's something that I've heard a lot on TV or in a podcast or something, chances are I'll probably get it right, even if I hadn't said it before.
Yeah, idiomatic speech makes that like tricky until you know.
Yeah, well, that's the whole other like. There's Spanish, and then there's all the different slang in Spanish.
Yeah, yeah. Which happens in English so often that it becomes an actual word.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, look, if you go, I've never been to Australia, but they say if you go there, you'll understand the words that are coming out of their mouth,
Mhm.
but you might miss like 50% of the point that they're making because they have different like colloquialisms than we do, you know?
Yeah, and that's where speaking with someone who actually is a native is so, so, so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
no.
while you're technically correct, it feels weird. It feels wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
There are those ingrained rules in English too that don't make any sense, but you naturally fall to them. And I think since you're learning Spanish, one of the difficulties going from English to a language like Spanish is the gender relationship of words.
Yeah, yeah. That's not something we really have here at all. Like a
No.
book is a book, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But in Spanish, you have, I mean, book would be one thing, but then like a pillow would be a different thing, and they have different genders.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, they're just nouns. Yeah,
And then you have like book and novel and magazine, and they're similar but different and unrelated.
yeah, it is. That is not super hard because I think most people know that in Spanish, if it ends with an O, it's probably masculine. If it ends with an A, it's probably feminine.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, probably, so there are some exceptions. And some of those exceptions can be grave, apparently.
Oh no.
Yeah. So like here's one that I heard, and I don't know which country it is, but pollo is chicken, Pollo, chicken. And in one of the countries, I don't know if it's Spain or some Latin American country, but if you say polla, that means penis.
Oh, wow.
So you got to be careful.
Nice.
So some of those mistakes can be grave.
Listen, sometimes yo quiero polla and
Yeah.
sometimes yo quiero polla.